Welcome to Week in One, the show that gives you a quick roundup of the top news stories and interviews featured on ENCA over the past 7 days. I'm Heidi Johannesburg. Let's take a look at a few of this week's top stories. A ninth suspect makes his first appearance in the Thabo Bester prison escape case. Suspended public protector Busisiwe Mkhwebane makes scathing allegations regarding an attempted extortion attempt by senior MPs this week. Residents in Johannesburg South are without water for a week. And Westbury residents protest over the Employment Equity Amendment Bill. The list of accomplices who allegedly facilitated Thabo Bester's prison escape is growing. A ninth suspect made his first appearance in court this week. The 31-year-old Zimbabwean national is facing several charges and will be back in court next week. ENCA senior reporter Slindelo Masikane compiled this report.
It was a brief appearance for Zanda Moyo in the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court. The 31-year-old kept his head hung low, avoiding eye contact with the cameras. Moyo has been linked to Facebook rapist Thabo Bester's elaborate escape from the Mangaung Correctional Center. The Zimbabwean national is now the ninth person that's been arrested. It's alleged Moyo assisted Dr. Nandipha Makutumana to claim Katlego Bereng's body from a government hospital. Bereng's body was planted in Bester's cell in an attempt to fake his own death.
He is facing 4 charges, which is fraud, violation of the body, harboring an inmate, an escaped inmate, and the last one, assisting an inmate to escape from lawful custody. Like we said before, that the investigation is ongoing. So once we have an investigative process that is underway, we are not going to rule out the possibility of more charges being added against any of the accused that have already appeared before the court.
In Johannesburg, Bereng's father watched court proceedings to see the man who claimed that his son's corpse was his brother.
I still want to know, how did my son die? Yes, we saw his remains, we laid him to rest, but you know, the big question is that, how did my son die? That is one question that is haunting me. You know, I'm trying to figure things out, but it is very difficult. But yes, as difficult as this journey is, but I know that at the end of the day, we will get to the truth.
Moyo is expected back in court on the 20th of June, where he will appear alongside 8 others. Police have not ruled out the possibility of more arrests. Slindelo Masikane, Bloemfontein in the Free State.
The Hawks are investigating extortion allegations against several ANC MPs. Suspended public protector Busisiwe Mkhwebane dropped bombshell audio recordings during a press briefing earlier this week. I was there and filed this report. Suspended public protector Busisiwe Mkhwebane says the messages and audio she released were recorded between her husband David Skosana and the late Tina Jomat Peterson. The meetings between the two took place in March this year.
Matt Peterson invited my husband to 2 separate physical meetings, both held at the Ocean Basket restaurant at OR Tambo International Airport. At this meeting, she solicited a bribe of approximately 600,000 for herself, Mr. Janji, Richard Janji, who is the chairperson of the inquiry, and Ms. Pemi Majodina, who is the chief whip of the ruling ANC. My husband pretended to play along and even negotiated the price to be set at 150,000 instead of 200,000 each. He actually intended to trap the culprits, and he proceeded to record the 2 meetings on his phone.
Mkhwebane says part of the audio recordings outlined the plan on how the inquiry was going to be delayed.
My husband asked, but how are you going to make sure that this happens? And then she said, no, we will make sure that we delay the whole process, and on the one hand, she's saying you must attack and you must ask, tell your wife to tell Mpofu to conduct an audit and bring all these things which they are doing, because she said there, you know, this process is so riddled with a lot of inconsistencies and unfairness, because some of us, you'd find that I've got 3 meetings. I can't attend all 3 meetings. They don't form a quorum. We just log in. We don't even participate.
Mkhwebane says she will continue to appear before the Section 194 inquiry, despite the fact that Jansi has not recused himself. The recordings and the rest of the evidence have been handed over to the police and the Hawks, who are investigating. Heidi Jokos in Johannesburg. A week-long water outage has angered residents in the south of Johannesburg, and some community members are threatening to take more drastic action. The outage was caused by a major pipe burst which affected water distribution to Ridgeway and surrounding areas. A 48-hour-long water outage is planned for next week to repair the Aikenhof pumping station. ENCA's Paula Letwiti-Jones has more.
Large parts of Johannesburg have been without water in recent weeks. Ridgeway in the south of the city is one such area. Supply has been restored after residents here endured dry taps for nearly a week. Residents say a lack of infrastructure maintenance is to blame.
To undertake a repair of that nature, we're probably going to go back to what we had to do yesterday, in that Joburg Water will then have to go and isolate the valves, isolate the reservoir, and affect basically the area again.
Meanwhile, Soweto residents have had enough. They took to the streets in a violent protest demanding the city prioritize water and sanitation issues in their area.
Funa noma mawusebenza buye ebusuku funa impela uhambe ibanga elingango 500 meters usuku la uhlala khona ebusuku ufuna uyokha le amanzi kunzima impela futhi kakhulu kunzima
akekho nje noyedwa okweweza wazosichazela ngendaba yamanzi. Impompo sisifakelwa ngalabo abasebenza emafemini, bafike ke ba extendeke leyo mpompo leyo basifakele yona, but ukuthi kuzoza ukhansela or ubani lutho.
Joburg Finance MMC Dada Morero admits that the city's funds aren't looking good. Morero says the metro is losing millions of rand due to failing water and electricity infrastructure, theft and vandalism.
We have therefore allocated money for Joburg Water and City Power in an attempt to try and deal with addressing water losses and electricity losses, which means we are focusing on strengthening the infrastructure, refurbishing the infrastructure, so that we don't lose. Our losses are really sitting at the high unacceptable levels of about between 30 and 35%. So we want to reduce them, and hence our commitment to reduce them to 25%, those water losses and electricity losses. So those are the challenges we have.
While the city has promised to fix the ailing infrastructure, residents are bracing themselves for a 2-day water outage from the 20th to the 22nd of June to repair the ever-failing Aikenhof pump station. Paula Letwiti-Jones in Johannesburg.
We'll feature some of the big interviews done by our anchors this week after the break. Welcome back to Week in One. I'm Heidi Jokos. Our shows followed up with several experts after suspended public protector Busisiwe Mkhwebane's damning allegations regarding an alleged extortion attempt this week. Mkhwebane alleges her and her husband were made an offer to bribe certain well-placed MPs to quash her impeachment inquiry. ENCA anchor Dan Moyane spoke to political analyst Sandile Swana for his take on this.
Overall, the parts that you watched of Mkhwebane this afternoon, earlier today rather, what stood out for you? What are them? I mean, there's so many allegations that she's making. She's also complaining against the likes of us in the media.
I hear her complaint, and it's a common complaint in South Africa by certain types of personalities. But I think people have just got to accept that there are certain precautions that are taken to determine what is publishable as truth, and so on and so forth. And stories do develop. the journalists in South Africa have played a major role in uncovering a lot of wrongdoing, especially since 2000, after the Polokwane conference until to date. So that one, I think it's tragic that she mixes her political battles with the media as if the media is a political party. I mean, she throws in the DA, the Ramaphosa and the ANC and all sorts of things. So that was unfortunate. However, there is two things that all of us have got to stand back and think about. The first one being that in this case that we're talking about, there is now a dead body, which is the body of Tina Jomat. So that needs careful investigation. Number two, there are audio recordings, digital recordings of messages and discussions and all that. That needs careful investigation, which means we cannot dismiss these things now out of hand because of that. So we do need to say there is something that needs to be investigated here.
South Africa Tonight anchor Sally Burdett had the opportunity to speak directly to Mkhwebane following those allegations.
Explain to me the link between your alleged your concern that state institutions, the judiciary, for example, didn't do their job, and the death of Tina Joemat-Pettersson. How's that linked?
Tina Joemat-Pettersson was the member of the committee.
Yeah.
And if she's a member of the committee, if the Western Cape High Court would have made sure that they are objective, they issue the judgment, which says Milham and Richard Janji should recuse themselves, we wouldn't be facing a situation where it's a protracted process, because at the end of the day, the matter would have been resolved.
I get that.
And then we get a new chairperson.
No, I get that.
Proceed.
But how
they wouldn't have reached.
How does that link to her death exactly? Because that's what you said. You said the state, in a way, all these institutions killed her. How did they kill her? Like, speak to me exactly about that.
That's why I'm saying the events leading towards her approaching my husband. Because at the end of the day,
killed her.
She said it will kill her herself.
How did it kill her?
She said to herself, if this comes to the fore, that she has offered the bribe, it's in the audio.
Yeah.
If you go through my statement, she said so herself.
So she says, and we've got the WhatsApp, she says, I'm very sorry you want to destroy me because of your anger. I think this is the point at which your husband is saying, I've got to bring up your name when I have this briefing. And he says, I won't destroy you. And she says, yes, you will. Now, how did she die? What caused her death?
I don't know.
No, but you have to know.
The family is still investigating. I don't know.
Here's my thing. Okay, listen to me about my reasoning. If she died of a heart attack, for example, how can you claim that the death was caused by the state?
Because already there were questions to her, and she was told a criminal case has been opened against her. And she's the one who approached my husband, and she knew that there is evidence.
Did it kill her? If you don't know how she died,
don't know.
But then how can you say emphatically the government killed her? Because you're suggesting, are you suggesting she killed herself?
The family is investigating.
Exactly, so you don't know. So how can you say, in a way, all these institutions killed her?
As part of our special focus on the country's ailing railway infrastructure, morning show anchor Cindy Mabe was at Park Station in Johannesburg. After speaking to commuters, she had the opportunity to interview PRASA spokesperson Andiswa Makanda. PRASA says vandalism and theft is continuing to interrupt services at some of its stations, but officials are working hard to ensure commuter safety.
How difficult has it been in you having to defend some of the criticism, be it fairly done or otherwise?
Yeah, I think don't be fooled by my looks. I just have youthful looks. Otherwise, I'm more than capable of handling the magnitude of this work. There's a lot of work that's happening at PRASA. I mean, when I arrived in 2021, there was that talk about rebuilding and planning to rebuild the infrastructure. And there was a lot of doubt, even internally, if we would be able to rebuild all this infrastructure that has been distracted and devastated. But the team did pull together, they did pull through and rebuilt the infrastructure. Right now, we have rebuilt 18 corridors reaching 59 of our targets. I know that you had a guest yesterday saying that we've only reached 12% of our targets. That is incorrect. We've actually reached 59% of our targets. We're recovering the rail infrastructure. And I know your theme is off the rails, but I'd like to say that PRASA is actually on track in terms of rebuilding and restoring passenger services.
Yeah, I mean, we have a balanced view of, there's always a flip side to the coin. That's why we have varying different voices that add to this topic. Earlier on, we had the DA Transport spokesperson who also highlighted the fact that, yes, while there are pockets of excellence, there's also a lot more that needs to be done. If you just look to your left, Andy, so I don't have to tell you, there's a whole corridor that hasn't been fixed, so to speak. So we're not here just to criticize, we're also here to highlight some of your achievements as well. Realistically speaking, though, you have lost revenue, at least 30%, I'm told, due to the fact that the infrastructure has now failed commuters.
I think that's correct. We have lost revenue. We've also lost passengers over the years. But as we're restoring our services, we can see the numbers starting to go up. They're not where we would want them to be. But when we start fixing some of the stations, then we'll be able to get more numbers and the revenue back. But that's the work that we're doing. And I mean, when we are rebuilding and restoring the services, we are now seeing about 14 million passengers using our trains across the country. We're running the services in Gauteng, KwaZulu-Natal, Western Cape and the Eastern Cape, and we're seeing those numbers starting to trickle back in. So there's a lot that's working. And to that corridor that you pointed to, that's the Germiston. I can tell you now that we've started fixing the Germiston line from Lerala to Germiston. We were commissioning the train just recently so that we can restore services. We've taken a phased-in approach in restoring the corridors and rehabilitating the infrastructure.
Coming up, Justice and Correctional Services Minister Ronald Lamola vows to bring the Gupta brothers back from the UAE. Welcome back to Week in One. I'm Heidi Jokos. The Guptas will come back to South Africa to account for their sins. These are the bold promises made by Justice and Correctional Services Minister Ronald Lamola this week. Government came under fire from opposition parties who are accusing the ANC of failing to bring back the Guptas and Shepherd Bushiri to account for their crimes. ENCA senior reporter Aisha Ismail compiled this report.
The minister's remark that the extradition was denied on a technicality seems to confirm the UAE's version that South Africa did not meet the legal requirements of the extradition agreement between the two countries. We did not submit a live warrant of arrest in support of our application. The application was considered with a cancelled warrant of arrest, and this is why the extradition application was apparently denied. House Chair.
Heron says the failure to extradite the Guptas from the UAE is a major blow. He questioned why South Africans should have confidence in the justice system and what guarantees are there that the Guptas and those who enabled them will be prosecuted. Justice Minister Ronald Lamola hit back at the accusations, saying South Africa did everything by the book in the extradition application.
With the extradition treaty between South Africa and the United Arab Emirates, the legal system of different countries vary, with some employing common law and others using civil law systems. Countries with civil law systems are generally less likely to extradite their citizens. Any other thing is in relation to our work that we have done with the United Arab Emirates. The United Arab Emirates implements civil and Sharia laws in the legal framework. The legal framework in the UAE is a unique amalgamation of Islamic Sharia principles and civil laws from Egypt and France. Only family members can access the court system in the UAE. Is daydreaming by Honorable Horn that I was aware. No South African diplomat or anyone was aware of the court case when it said, because unlike our courts, it's not an open court system. It happened and we were informed on the date that we informed the South Africans.
The Guptas were not charged in the UAE and were allowed to go free. There are now fresh attempts to get them back to South Africa to stand trial and account for their role in state capture.
We are saying, as the government of this country, we will ensure that the Guptas come back to South Africa to account for their sins and for their crime. There will be accountability. It may take time because of the protracted nature of extradition, but it's going to happen. They will one day face justice in the courts of our country.
Aisha Ismail, Parliament.
As part of our special focus earlier this week, we looked at water issues in KwaZulu-Natal. It soon became clear that the lack of access to running water isn't unique to Johannesburg. In Durban, Umlazi residents protested because they haven't had water for the past 2 months. ENCA's Busisiwe Mkhwebane has the story.
Residents of Umlazi say they are fed up with having to go without water. Residents of BB section say it's been 2 months without a drop.
Pelile 37 days singenawo amanzi aqale afika ama-tankers kuthe kusuka ayema thina sama senior citizens no arthritis mina ngisakwazi ukukula ngiyosuka emgwaqweni nesparkpark ngize endlini
sifuna amanzi hayi amavatekana yini lengalungi engabanga ukuthi kuze kuphele u3 months silokhu into ebuhlungu nazo zonke ukuye toilet yonke ebuhlungu nazo zonke.
They took to the streets on Sunday in protest calling for answers. To make matters worse, a pump station was recently vandalized, but community members say this is sabotage by those who might be profiting from the water crisis. Schools are also closed as a result.
Njasikhuluma nje izikolelo kwaBP ayisafundi amathwala awethe ezikoleni izingane zikhishwa ngo10 ungayichaza ukuthi yini ingane zivuke kusenze esikoleni u10 seyidedeliwe ngenxa ukuthi amanzi awekho ezikoleni.
eThekwini Mayor Mxolisi Kaunda visited the vandalized pump station and met with community leaders. He's promised that repairs will be finished this week.
The temporal solution that they brought on board is going to start yielding positive results tomorrow. People will start seeing a difference tomorrow, but we want to call our committee members to be patient with us.
We presented the community's sabotage allegations to the mayor. He says police are investigating, but gave no indication as to whether the municipality is doing anything.
And you know, we are not investigators, we are just a municipality, so we just lay charges. Then it's the responsibility of the police to bring us with the outcome of that investigation.
Kaunda also couldn't give a time frame for when the pipe that supplies the southern parts of Durban would be fixed. Instead, he kicked the can down at the proverbial road, saying they are still waiting on designs. Busisiwe Mkhwebane, Umlazi, Durban.
The newly signed Employment Equity Amendment Bill continues to be a bone of contention. Residents of Westbury and Johannesburg took to the streets this week, calling for it to be scrapped. They say coloured communities are once again being left out and residents are demanding equal job opportunities. The area continues to battle high crime and gang violence. ENCA's Mkhwebane has more.
Westbury residents are protesting. They are marching on local businesses and local government institutions to hand over memorandums calling for more job opportunities.
It cannot continue. We see our children daily falling into drugs because they have no hope. And that also causes all these gang fights that you are seeing in our community because drug dealers are willing to employ them.
They say the Employment Equity Amendment Act leaves coloured communities out in the cold.
It is the Equity Employment Amendment Act that has broke the camel's back, that brings us out to the streets. We are here to say that we will not accept it as the communities in Gauteng.
The bill was signed into law by President Cyril Ramaphosa in April, but residents insist it's unconstitutional and they want it scrapped.
It must go. We cannot allow that bill to be passed because it's going to affect the lives of a lot of people in this country, coloured, Indian and white.
Meanwhile, gang-related violence continues to plague the area, with an 11-year-old girl the latest victim. Jean Fourie was shot and killed on Saturday evening.
Since the deployment of police in the month of March, there were shootings like every other night. But for the past 3 weeks, that has changed tremendously. If I can say, this past Wednesday, when the deployment was retracted, that is when things just went haywire again. So there's a tremendous increase, I would say, and then we're also expecting more.
Community members say unemployment is fueling crime in the area. They're demanding a plan of action for businesses and government within 2 weeks, or more protests will follow. The Alliance is also challenging the act in court. Mkhwebane, Westbury.
And that's it for this week's edition of Week in One. From myself and the fantastic team, have a great Youth Day and a safe long weekend.